Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Kernersville Board of Aldermen. Today is Tuesday, February 3rd, and we are happy that you are joining us here tonight. We'll begin with calling the meeting to order and an invocation by Pastor Randy Edwards of Grace Church. Welcome, Pastor Edwards, and then that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
God Almighty, I come to you this public affairs. Liberate the business of our community. Thank you for wisdom. Ask that you give them success in their efforts. Father, with their labor on our behalf this Thank you, Lord, for those who work for our govern, oversee our resources, maintain civil order, no work, recognize. Please continue to bless them as they work and serve. We live in a privileged country and community, and it is easy for us to expect, even demand the sorts of benefits that other people in other places of the world either do not have or at this moment having to fight for. Help us to be grateful for our town employees. May we as citizens work diligently to preserve what we have received. We ask that you would have mercy on our law enforcement personnel. Please keep them safe as they do the work of protecting us. Have mercy on our first responders, our emergency service personnel and firefighters. We thank you for them and ask that you would protect them as they run towards danger, put themselves in harm's way to rescue those in need. Lastly, Lord, I pray for the men and women gathered here in all their various roles. They are here to do a job, but they are away from families and are working when most of us have finished our workday. They come with their own burdens and troubles and desires and needs. Would you bless them, their families and loved ones? Would you give them grace and mercy? Would you work in these servants tonight that they might trust you and do what they do for us by faith, knowing that this world is not all that there is, accepting hardship as the pathway to peace, and trusting that there is a reward for those who earnestly seek you. Lord, please bless them and bless the deliberations of this meeting. May your will be done. It's these things. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which is one nation, God, visible, liberty. Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Edwards. Just a quick shout out to your family that came with you. Thank you for joining us. All right, we do have some public hearings tonight. We do have some excellent presentations following that, so good meeting. All right, when an agenda item is denoted as a public hearing, persons attended shall be permitted to address the Board of Aldermen regarding the item under consideration, those speaking in favor speaking first, and those against speaking second. Proponents and opponents shall each be given 20 minutes of time to speak. They may choose to allow one speaker to utilize that time, or they may allocate the time amongst different speakers. In the event that either proponents or opponents have not designated a speaker or speakers to represent their views, the mayor shall divide the 20 minutes by the number of speakers wishing to address the Board of Aldermen, and each such speaker shall be given that time within which to express his or her comments, ideas, and concerns. So our public hearings, we have item 1A, which is a public hearing on a Kernersville development plan, and a related here, 1B, a public hearing on a zoning. So we'll hear both of those together. The public hearing is zoning docket KB 79. And the rezoning is Bill Greco, Land Solutions, agent for Southern Custom Homes LLC for an address near Nelson and Piney Grove Road, zoning docket 8. Requested use as residential building complex. So Ms. Garner?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Board of Aldermen. Tonight's first case is a KDP and rezoning case for the parcel at 409 Nelson Street. The land use plan amendment is a request from medium density residential to mixed density residential. It is related to the rezoning case, which is a request to rezone the property from residential single family 7,000 square foot minimum lot size to residential single family quadruplex conditional. So this is a conditional rezoning. You can see the parcel, it's pretty small. It is outlined in red in the middle of that salmon color in the middle of the screen. Medium density residential is defined in our land use plan as 0 to 7 units per acre, primarily located in the central areas of Kernersville and the north side of North Main Street. The goal of medium density residential is to provide a source of moderate priced housing in the form of zoning districts that promote small lot, single dwelling unit structures. Mixed residential density is 0 to 12 units per acre by our land use plan, and it has been established in areas that are transitional land use areas and located along major thoroughfares. The goal of the mixed residential density area is to accommodate growing demand for smaller owner-occupied housing units, such as cluster homes, duplexes, triplexes, quadruplexes, and condos. The site proposal is 12.44 units per acre, which would result, based on that lot size, in only 2 units. The lot, as I mentioned, was pretty small. It's 0.16 acres. So the proposed rezoning district in this case is residential single-family quadruplex conditional, which is primarily intended to accommodate predominantly single-family areas containing a mixture of single-family detached dwellings, duplexes, triplexes, and quadruplexes. Our recommended practice, and one we've been consistent with, is that when considering a rezoning request that does not conform to the adopted land use plan, we consider amending the land use plan with the rezoning. Staff's analysis is that the proposed land use plan amendment is inseparable from the requested rezoning, which is considered an illegal spot zoning per consultation with our town legal counsel, Mr. Ed Powell, and therefore should be denied. David Owens, retired now from the North Carolina School of Government, defines spot zoning in an article in Coates Canon as a zoning ordinance or amendment which singles out and reclassifies a relatively small tract owned by a single person and surrounded by a much larger area uniformly zoned so as to impose upon the smaller tract greater restrictions than those imposed upon the larger area, or so as to relieve the small tract from restrictions to which the rest of the area is subjected. This came also out of Blades versus City of Raleigh. If the board were to approve the rezoning, it would be recommended to amend the land use plan designation from medium density residential to mixed residential density. The parcel in question, though, is neither located within a transitional land area nor along a major thoroughfare as described in the description for the mixed residential density in our land use plan. The location of the parcel does not provide transition between land use designations and is accessed by an easement from a collector street and not a major thoroughfare. Nelson Street is the collector street. Piney Grove would be a larger thoroughfare. Our recommendation from Planning Board and staff for the Kernersville Development Plan is denial of the land use plan amendment request containing all of PIN number 6886-36-6962, requesting from medium density residential to mixed residential density in the land use plan. This was heard at the last Planning Board meeting, and all members who were present voted against this KDP amendment. Any questions before I move on to the rezoning request? Okay. The associated rezoning is case K829. The petitioner is Bill Greco, Land Solutions as agent for the owner, and the owner is Southern Custom Homes LLC. As I mentioned, the proposed zoning request is to rezone from residential single-family 7,000 square foot minimum lot size to residential single-family quadruplex conditional. So there would be an adopted site plan, and the proposed use with this is residential building duplex. So it's one structure with 2 units, though the ratio works out to 12.44 units per acre, with the acreage being so small at 0.16, it's just a duplex that would be permitted. Surrounding zoning designations, to the north, east, south, and west is residential, single-family 7. That's the 7,000 minimum square foot lot. You can see some IP close by. That is Civitan Park, which is owned by the town, and the fire station. The proposed use is residential building duplex, which is defined in our ordinance as a residential building which contains 2 dwelling units and which occupies 1 zoning lot. Conditional use district site plans become the plan for development if they're approved. So the site plan would only, if it were adopted, would only permit the construction of 1 structure with 2 units, as found in Appendix A of the staff report. Access to this site is provided by a 30-foot access and utility easement from Nelson Street. It does not have any road frontage itself, this parcel. Additional conditions that would be required by the RSQ zoning district would be a 5-foot landscape buffer between parking and adjacent parcels, and a 3-foot buffer between the parking and structure for landscaping, and mechanical equipment would either have to be in the rear of the building or screened by the building. Use conditions of UDO section 4.4.64 require the development to be compatible with surrounding buildings. This would include sloped roofs, covered entrances, and pedestrian height windows with sills. The applicant has submitted elevation renderings as part of Appendix A to conform with this requirement in the UDO. The land use plan is currently medium density residential. Proposed would be mixed residential density if this were to be approved. Approving the Kernersville development plan would be recommended. If the board wishes to approve this case, the KDP is recommended for denial due to the association with the rezoning, which we consider to be an illegal spot zoning. As I mentioned, we find that this request is considered to meet the standards for illegal spot zoning per consultation with town legal counsel and should be denied. This is the same definition from Blades versus City of Raleigh that was presented with the KDP. We thought through this one a lot, and factor number 1, and also recommending this as a spot zoning, is the lot size and the surrounding zonings. It is a 0.16 acre lot, so it's very small, and it is surrounded by RS7 zoned properties that specifically do not allow multi-unit development. The land use plan compatibility and surrounding designations. The location does not conform to that mixed residential development description of either being located in a transitional land use area or being located along a major thoroughfare. Surrounding designations are specifically for single unit, single family development. Planning board and staff have the same recommendation, that the board move to recommend denial of the request to change the zoning ordinances of the town of Kernersville by denying the rezoning of the property in case K829, being all of the PIN number as shown from RS7 to RSQC, finding the rezoning is inconsistent with the town's comprehensive plan and is both unreasonable and against the public interest because the request to rezone has been determined to be an illegal spot zone by town's legal counsel, and the residential single-family quadruplex conditional zoning district is not in conformance with the land use plan's designation of this area as medium density residential. Those members of planning board who were present at the last meeting all voted against the rezoning request. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions this time? Want to use your microphone?
Is there, forgive me, I haven't learned how to do this yet. Is there any type of development of that particular 0.16 acre tract that would be permitted in this land use plan, would be consistent with the land use plan here? In other words, what can they do with it, for example?
By right, the property could be developed with a single structure that's 1 unit, so a single family house. By right, they could get a permit tomorrow if they met all the requirements for that. Most of the zoning in this area, the RS7 and the RS12 would not permit a duplex. The closest thing that would permit multifamily is either the pedestrian business or the general business that's on the corner of Nelson Street and Bodenhammer, or going the other way across from Amalfi's and kind of tucked in behind the Dollar Tree, there is a senior living facility. So those are zoned residential, I think that's residential multi-use or multi-family special, but they're not in the immediate proximity of this site. And that was part of our determination when we said, okay, it's not on the major thoroughfare, it's not on Piney Grove Road, it's not on the corner. It's surrounded entirely by RS7. And these were some of the factors, and the size in particular were some of the factors that when we were weighing the option and the recommendation that came down to.
I understand you from what you said that there's an opinion both from town council and confirmed by the Institute of Government that this would fall within the definition of spot zoning, and that's illegal for us to do. Is that overstating it?
That's my understanding.
All right,
Thank
we
you.
need to have the public hearing. I don't have anyone signed up to speak. Keith, did you receive any speaker cards? Is there anyone? Okay, I'll declare the public hearing open. If you'd like to speak on this case, please come forward. If you could give us your name and address. You may have to repeat it so the clerk can get it correctly in the records.
Good evening. My name is Bill Greco. I'm with Land Solutions. My address is P.O. Box 347 in Oak Ridge. Speaking this evening on behalf of the applicant, who is a local small business owner in the building industry. I'd like to thank the staff for all their assistance with this case. As was mentioned, we have had multiple discussions prior to this hearing. We did have our open house, and we did have a planning board. So with that said, I would like to kind of go back through the staff report and point out where we differ, and that's okay. At the end of the day, all of these land use items lie in your hands as the governing body. So with regards to kind of the general area and the zoning, that staff report graphic that you just saw does show a lot more zoning districts than what they've used in their analysis. We've got HB, HBS, RMU, NB. These are all located within reasonable, which is a term I'm going to emphasize throughout my presentation, within reasonable proximity of this site. So if you walk out and you stand in the street in front of the site, you can see AutoZone, the old Food Line Shopping Center, Dollar Tree, Grease Monkey. There's a church 2 doors down if you look to your right or to the west. And most importantly, you can see multifamily from this site, visible. Just right across the way is multifamily in this proximity. So we differ with staff on the definition of proximity and reasonableness in that analysis. If you can see multifamily residential from your property, that's pretty indicative that it's within the area. One of the things that we discovered through our public meeting process was there's 14 or so parcels located within 200 feet of this one. Only 4 of them have a Nelson Street address. That's 28%. These surrounding property parcels are owned by entities in Pennsylvania, Illinois, Virginia, along with a large number of them in Greensboro, Winston, Raleigh, and High Point. This is very indicative of a lot of investment property or rental properties, however you want to phrase that, which in turn, again, reasonably looking at this, our area, our block, if you will, it's essentially 72% of those are essentially business operations. They're rental properties, investment properties, they're all businesses. This is not an island in the middle of a larger 50 or 100 or 200 lot planned residential community. This is simply not that. the district description contained in these staff reports, it perfectly describes what we're requesting, which is simply a different type of structure in an area that has predominantly single family. And the existing infrastructure is sufficient, so we do meet all that. Our site plan does meet all the requirements. Excuse me, our building design meets all the requirements, so we don't have any issues there. When we get to the land use plan, it speaks to our request as being an excellent source of moderate priced housing. It doesn't distinguish between home ownership and rental properties. What we're asking for is exactly that. We want to create a source of moderately priced housing. This area goes from majority commercial to residential to mixed, and it's all on their graphics. They just chose to have a very narrow focus, very narrow. So when you look at what touches your zoning as your area, that's not reasonable. We would have 1 million zoning districts just within Kernersville city limits if that were the case. We think reasonable is more what you might do when you walk out your front door to walk your dog, or after dinner, hey honey, let's go for a walk. That's a reasonable, and what you can see standing on your front porch, not just what's right here and what's right here that's touching you. The other items in the staff report are thoroughfare plan, watershed, and floodplain. We have no issues with any of that. The site perfectly conforms. So our summary is staff, and as they describe it, town legal counsel, they've essentially predetermined that this is an illegal spot zoning. They haven't provided any real basis for why that is. You have to show how approval of the request would be detrimental to adjacent property owners or detrimental to the greater welfare of the surrounding area. So spot zoning versus illegal spot zoning is something I'll touch on again. The first factor that the staff quotes is the actual size of the lot. So again, if you just look at anything within 200 feet, I'm going to go slightly bigger than staff. There's 2 lots within 200 feet that are smaller than ours. So the size of our lot is certainly reasonable and does conform with our surrounding area. It's not a one-off super unique piece. The lot size is probably from 70 years ago when original zoning was applied. That was simply looking at maps, driving down the road and going, this all looks like RS7. This all looks like AG. That's how original zoning got applied. So some of these lots may be existing non-conforming with regards to size. Lots of those situations in this area. Second factor is the conformance with the land use plan, which again, that's remedied as done in many jurisdictions by amending the land use plan along with the zoning. So that's not a new concept. So back to spot zoning. Spot zoning in and of itself is not illegal. There's spot zoning and then there's illegal spot zoning. That is determined after the fact in court. You don't get to predetermine it. If you were to do what's considered a spot zoning, we have the same article that was displayed before and that has been pulled from. And like any article related to land use, you can find text and paragraphs throughout that support your position, whether you're for or against. It's journalism 101. It's just the nature of it. But again, it all comes back to a governing body making a reasonable, well-informed decision. The case that was cited, Blades versus City of Raleigh, that went to court. Court emphasized the need for a reasonable basis to justify the zoning, largely in terms of the effects on neighboring properties. So we're back to this reasonable basis. We believe the reasonable basis is something that staff frequently refers to in their reports. We have a housing shortage in Kernersville. Not only do we have that shortage, but we need a variety of housing types. I think we're all should be reasonably familiar with the fact that a lot of younger folks, a lot of folks who are just getting started in the world, fresh out of college, they don't have that lump sum down payment for a house. We'd like to attract that. I've been in this area since '93. I know personally quite a few Kernersville staff, Kernersville employees that don't live in Kernersville. So we definitely have a need here that is a reasonable basis. That reasonable basis, if it promotes the general welfare by conserving the values of adjoining properties and encouraging the most appropriate use thereof. So at no point has the staff or the planning board or anybody pointed out what about this request will damage the value of adjacent properties. That's a key fact. That comes from the court cases. And the answer is absolutely nothing. The difference between a duplex and a single family dwelling in this instance is simply a second door on the front of the structure. The layout of this property is such, as staff has pointed out, we're never going to achieve anything other than a duplex. This isn't a multi-story building. Doesn't have parking garage, no swimming pool. It is very, very similar to a number of adjacent properties up and down Nelson Street. The architecture, as demonstrated by our submittal and by staff's testimony, will blend in perfectly. So nobody has articulated how this change could possibly damage adjoining property values. So encouraging the most appropriate use is pretty simple. We have an affordability issue, we have a lack of inventory issue, and another unit in this location fits in perfectly. Notwithstanding the fact that all the documents, UDO, land use plan, school of government, court cases, they all circle back to the governing body making a decision based on that word reasonable. This request is not outrageous, it's not unreasonable, and it certainly hasn't been proven to be detrimental to adjacent property owners. And in fact, I would suggest to you that it benefits the general welfare of the community at large by providing this much-needed housing in this very specific, much-needed demographic. So this property is going to support 4 bedrooms, couple cars. The fact that you have 2 front doors and a firewall inside that nobody can see, it's all in this techie, sort of nitpicky we go through and we find these sentences, and that's your role as the governing body, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but at the end of the day, again, this is a reasonable request that has not been fully given thought as to that larger area. If you go a little further down Nelson Street, right there at the old Hedgecock Lumber, there's a quadruplex right on Nelson Street. You can walk to it. There's additional duplexes on Nelson Street that you could walk to from here. And again, you can see multifamily from this property. So I would suggest to you that a denial would be somewhat unreasonable. How can you say that standing on your property looking at multifamily units, but I can't have one? I think it's reasonable. I think it's something you folks don't come up on very often. And again, spot zoning versus illegal spot zoning, 2 separate things, and your staff nor your attorney can predetermine the legality of any action you take that would have to be determined later in a court case, which is what we all like to cite. And I've just demonstrated to you what they're looking for in these court cases. So again, we think it's a good request. We haven't had an outpouring of opposition from any corner at any juncture in this process that we've been through. I thank you for your time. I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Grieco. All right, this is a combined public hearing, as I opened it with, on the development plan and the proposed rezoning. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor? This would be anyone else to speak in favor of amending the Kernersville development plan or in favor of the rezoning? Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Okay, so the first issue is our determination and vote on the Kernersville development plan, the proposed amendment. I think you have up the rezoning. Would you like to use your microphone?
Mr. Greco, is it, Catherine, if you would put up the slide again with the definition of spot zoning from the Institute of Government, can you do that?
Okay, so you'd like to ask Mr. Grieco a question? If you could come to the podium, but only limit your response to answering Mr. Apple's question, please. Go ahead, Mr. Apple.
Mr. Greco, is it your position that the definition of spot zoning that is cited in the last paragraph here of this slide, this definition in the Blades versus City of Raleigh case, is it your contention that the definition is wrong, or is it your contention that the application of the definition by staff and the planning board are wrong? And if so, what's your basis for that?
Yes, sir. If you'll give me 1 second, I have the actual codes canon here. I want to find some more context as to that quote before I answer you. So I do not disagree with this particular quote as it's defining a zoning ordinance or amendment which singles out and reclassifies a relatively small tract owned by a single person and surrounded by a much larger area uniformly zoned. Much larger area uniformly zoned. Again, let's keep this up, but we can go back to staff's graphics. You folks have to reasonably determine what is a much larger area. This is very small. These parcels are 50 feet wide, 75 feet wide, and 100. So I disagree with staff by saying when you stand right here, You can see multifamily right here, right across the way. So this isn't a much larger, uniformly zoned area. That's your area you're looking at. That's not uniformly zoned.
Mr. Grieco, you've stepped away from your microphone. so
Sorry,
If you could
that's a
carry it
much,
with you.
that's a much larger area, and it's certainly not uniformly zoned. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different zoning districts are visible. That's where I disagree with staff's interpretation, and I don't believe it's reasonable, and I don't believe it accurately depicts a much larger area. And again, right down here, right over here, exist multifamily developments. They're there now. Does that answer your question, Mr. Apple?
Mr. Apple, if you could use
What
your
is the
microphone.
multifamily unit that is across the street that you alluded to?
Bradford Village is the name of,
Bradford
Bradford
Village?
Village is the name of that complex.
Okay,
There's a quadruplex, as I mentioned earlier, right down there by the old Hedgecock lumber. Again, when we talk about applying this court case, a much larger area, I circle back to just common sense. And what I believe to be reasonable is something you can see with your own eyes from your property, or something you would reasonably walk to. That's something you would interact with. You know, land use, ordinances, all that's all there, that's fine. Real world, people in their home, they're gonna interact with their surroundings within a reasonable distance. Something 3 miles away is probably not gonna affect them. You folks know that from all the cases you've heard.
Do you
I
have any,
just wanted to hear your thinking about that.
do you have any more questions, Mr. Apple?
I do not.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Grieco.
I have a question for Catherine.
Yes. And Mr. Grieco, you can sit down now.
What is the scale of the map that is being shown here? Do we have a standard scale that we use when showing the surrounding zonings?
No, we don't have a scale on this map. We try to include several cross streets just so people can orient themselves to where they're looking. Piney Grove and Bodenhammer being two pretty significant streets within the larger vicinity of this area. But this is not to scale, or not to a scale that's been defined on this page.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else have any questions? All right, the first issue, if you could put back your slide up, Ms. Garner, about the development plan.
And Madam Mayor and Board, just so you'll know, the motion up is staff's recommendation. You also have the alternate motion at your desk if you choose to do a motion other than what staff's recommended.
Does everyone have their alternate motion and the staff's recommendation? All right, this would be just on the Kernersville development plan. Mr. Gorham, did you have a motion?
Yes. Based on the information presented, I would like to move to recommend denial of the land use plan amendment request containing all of PN 686-8636-6962 from medium density residential to mixed residential density in the land use plan.
So a motion to recommend denial of the land use plan amendment request with the PIN as listed by staff for medium density residential to mixed residential density in the land use plan made by Mayor Pro Tem Gorham. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Pegram. All in favor of denial? 4. All opposed? Mr. Thompson, wait a minute. You voted for denial. In favor of denial? Yes. So you voted with Sarah. Okay, so Sarah, Bill, JR, and Randall voted together. And then Chris voted the opposite. So 4-1, so the land use plan amendment is denied. All right, so now we are to the rezoning. Do I have a motion? There's one on the screen. There's the sheet and the,
Okay.
or the screen.
Yeah, got it right here. Yeah, Madam Mayor, move to recommend denial the request to change zoning ordinance of the town of Kernersville by denying the zoning of the property in case K 829 containing all of PIN 6886-366962 from RS7 to RS2-C.
And there, do you agree with the rest? Do you want to include the rest of the recommendation as
You
well?
want the whole recommendation as worded?
Yes.
Yes, okay. It said rezoning being inconsistent with the town's comprehensive plan and further being both unreasonable and against the public interest because of request to rezone has been determined to be an illegal spot zone by town council, legal counsel, and number two, the RSQ-C zoning district is not in conformance with the LUP's designation of this area as medium-density residential.
Okay, I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Gorham. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Spanis. All in favor? Okay, I've got 4 in favor. All opposed? Got 1 opposed. Mr. Thompson's opposed. Okay. Appreciate your presentation. Is there anything further on this? All right. We will move on then to the next rezoning. This is a public hearing rezoning. Tony Alford, owner, requesting a general rezoning from residential single family, 12,000 square foot minimum lot size and highway business to highway business. Oh, from both residential and highway business to only highway business for property located east of the intersection of Edgewood Street and NC 66 South, zoning docket K832. Ms. Garner?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a split zoning case. As you read into the record, the property is currently zoned both RS12 and highway business, and the property owner is seeking to rezone it to just highway business. The parcel is located beside and mostly behind the 66 Diner and the Best Logistics Driving School. So tucked in there, if you blink, you'll miss it, right along 66 there at 421. Surrounding properties are zoned highway business conditional, and then there's a small sliver of the diner site that's also highway business and a residential single family. So it's a little bit of a hodgepodge from the transitional nature of growth in this corridor, but we've been trying to clean up these split zonings as we come upon them when somebody is seeking to develop the property. So we'd like to rezone from RS12 and highway business to just highway business. A portion of the parcel that is zoned highway business is currently used for parking for the Route 66 diner located on the adjacent parcel. Both parcels are owned by the same person or same group. So we've had conversations with them about how this rezoning would affect the 66 diner, because we know that is a much loved establishment. So there's that small section up in the north corner that is that shared piece. The land use plan identifies this in both the NC 66 Business 40 Commercial Center, plans for the area around North Carolina 66 and Business 40, now known as US 421 and Salem Parkway, as developing to encourage gas stations, restaurants, and car dealerships. And then the NC 66 and Industrial Drive corridor was established with plans for the areas east of 66 to develop and redevelop for manufacturing, distribution, office, and commercial uses that serve the needs of businesses and workforces. The current land use plan identifies this area as commercial and environmental protected, so it's in a couple special corridors, but it also has a designation itself, the commercial and then environmental protected. I think there's a stream at the back. So the requested rezoning conforms to the land use plan designation for commercial. It groups high-intensity traffic, and it has access to larger thoroughfares such as North Carolina 66 South and Salem Parkway. So the Highway Business Zoning District provides uses that satisfies the goals of the commercial designation and those two small area plans. These are the uses that are permitted with the change to highway business. So we would remove the residential building uses from the RS12 portion, and we would add a bunch of commercial uses, which is in line with the way the land use plan envisions this area developing. Those that are in yellow would have additional standards that would need to be met. So it's possible they could be allowed, but there are other hurdles that they would have to jump. On the thoroughfare plan, the site is not encumbered by any future roadway plans identified on the town's thoroughfare plan. The site is currently serviced by an existing curb cut along North Carolina 66 that's intended for residential use. So we've confirmed with the North Carolina Department of Transportation that a driveway permit will be required for commercial development at the time of civil construction review. You can see the location of that small little driveway. Again, you blink, you miss it, right there with the blue arrow. Staff has advised the property owner, who I mentioned also owns the 66 Diner parcel, to speak with NCDOT about what changes may be requested and or required in regards to infrastructure improvements or impacts on the existing access on the 66 Diner site. So we've had lots of conversations with this individual about talk to DOT, talk to them often, talk to them early, so you understand what road improvements they may require as part of issuing that driveway permit, but then how that might also affect the 66 Diner and whether there will be a shared driveway, shared parking, but fortunately they are under the same ownership. The request to rezone the property from RS12 and highway business to just highway business is in conformance with dimensional and access requirements set in the UDO and land use requirements as set forth in the land use plan. Any changes to the site will be reviewed for compliance with the Unified Development Ordinance standards at the time of civil construction review. And staff has emphasized many times over that the property owner begin discussions with NCDOT regarding possible requirements or impacts of future commercial development. Planning board and staff both recommend amending the zoning ordinance of the town to rezone the property in case K832 from RS12 and highway business to highway business. The said rezoning being both consistent with the town's comprehensive plan and further being both reasonable and in the public interest because the request to rezone to the highway business zoning district is consistent with the land use plan. The highway business zoning district uses are appropriate for the small area designations also established in the land use plan, and the highway business zoning district and range of uses allowed within the highway business district are appropriately located adjacent to the North Carolina 66 South thoroughfare. This was heard at the January planning board meeting, and those who were present voted in favor of the rezoning. Be happy to answer any questions.
All right, this is a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Does anyone have any questions of Ms. Garner?
I have no questions. I would recommend approval as recommended by staff.
Moves to approve as recommended by staff. Got a motion by Alderman Thompson, second by Mayor Pro Tem Gorham. All in favor? It's unanimous. Anything else on this one, Ms. Garner? All right, we are to the public session, and in the public session, the first item is speakers from the floor. I do not have anyone signed up to speak to address the board on an item not otherwise included in the agenda, but if you're here and like to speak something, from the floor? This is your opportunity. Seeing none, we will move on to a presentation, the Piedmont Greenway Update, building a connection from Winston-Salem to Greensboro through Kernersville. So this is Palmer.
Yes.
Welcome, Palmer McIntyre,
Thank you.
Conservation Planner with Piedmont Land Conservancy. We're very interested in hearing your presentation.
Yes, thank you for providing the opportunity for me to speak to you all tonight. We appreciate it. We want to talk to you about the concept of the Piedmont Greenway, why it's important, and where we are today. So I'm Palmer McIntyre. I'm a conservation planner with Piedmont Land Conservancy, and we are a regional nonprofit land trust. Our mission is to conserve natural spaces, including parks and trails and greenways, family farms, and our rivers and streams across our 9-county service area. So we came up with this bold idea of the Piedmont Greenway in the early 2000s, a trail, you can go ahead and switch to the next slide, a trail that would connect the 2 largest cities in the Triad. The vision was a 19-mile trail. It would go through a shared recreational asset Triad Park in the middle and connect also 3 towns, Oak Ridge, Summerfield, and Kernersville, which is right in the middle, and also connect into some other trail systems. You can go to the next slide, on either side of the Greenway. So it's meant to be a regional spine connecting into these other regional networks, including the Mountain to Sea Trail, the Bicentennial Greenway, which connects Greensboro to High Point in Guilford County, the AMY Greenway, which is a north-south rail trail in Guilford County, lots of watershed trails around Greensboro's drinking water supply lakes, and then on this side of it, the Kernersville Greenway, the Salem Lake Trail, and then of course the Salem Creek Greenway. And because it crosses lots of different boundaries, there's a lot of different partners involved in the Piedmont Greenway, and they have been since the beginning of the idea, including the cities and counties and towns and the MPOs and TPO and the Piedmont Land Conservancy and Piedmont Triad Regional Council. And we serve at a regional level so we can help bridge those gaps in between those different jurisdictions. You can go to the next slide. So why it matters. Greenways are important for a lot of different reasons. They provide a lot of different benefits. So at the community level, greenways connect people to neighborhoods and to destinations, such as parks and schools and downtowns. And so they enhance quality of life and make places more attractive and high quality of life places to live. On the economic side, we do have studies in North Carolina that were funded by North Carolina DOT and done by NC State University that show us some real data. And those studies show that every dollar that's invested in a greenway delivers more than $1.70 annually back. So it's an investment that more than pays for itself in the long run in terms of business support for those that are associated with those greenway structures. On the health side, greenways are free recreational assets. They're available to the public at no charge. They're accessible for people of all different abilities. So they therefore promote movement of our bodies and deliver real benefits in terms of physical health as well as mental health. And then on the environmental side, greenways often protect natural resources while protecting our open spaces. On the safety side, and I'm going to talk more about that in just a second, off-road facilities are much safer than on-road facilities for pedestrians and cyclists. And we've got some data about that in just a second. And then on property values, we do have studies in North Carolina show that homes that are within 5,000 feet of greenways often sell for $4,800 to $6,800 more than other homes. So you can go to the next slide. Regarding safety, so North Carolina continually ranks high nationally in terms of non-motorist crashes. This map shows, and it's taken from a North Carolina DOT dashboard that anyone can access, but it shows the area of Kernersville, and so there are a lot of dots on this map that show that there are a lot of non-motorist crashes in this area. So a greenway, again, is that off-road facility that provides safety. You can go to the next slide. Also why it matters, there's strong citizen support for greenways. So in your 2024 Play Onward Parks and Recreation Master Plan, 40% of the survey respondents selected greenways as their top choice in terms of features they want to see, and that tied with another 40% was the highest of anything. So the other thing that got 40% was like adventure playgrounds. And you can see on the word cloud here that greenways feature very prominently. So that's what citizens want. Also related with the National Recreation and Park Association, they hold benchmarks and standards for communities based on population. And their assessment or that their standards were part of the assessment included in the Play Onward master plan, but they show that, whoops, it disappeared. They show that Kernersville currently has 1.2 miles of greenway with the Kernersville Greenway, but given your population size, that there is 7 miles deficient of greenway to serve this population. And by 2033, given your population growth rates, that there would be a 10-mile deficit. So it just shows that there are some standards that, that would need to be met with further investment in greenways. Okay. You can go to the next, if it will slip to the next slide, there you go. And another why it matters is the 2019 Etta Lee and Lawrence Pope Memorial Park Master Plan vision states that that park will be the central Kernersville Park is a greenway hub for this Piedmont Greenway that will connect Greensboro and Winston. So that park itself is meant to be a real hub for the green. And it just, again, just to reemphasize, greenways are real critical infrastructure for all communities because they provide just safe places for people to recreate, get outside, and be together. Okay, so now moving on to how trails are built. So greenways are linear parks. They're very complicated. They take a long time. So we start with the concept. That's what we did back in the early 2000s. And then you drill down into feasibility. So you decide, given the constraints and opportunities, where can this path really actually go? And then the next step is the right-of-way acquisition, and then you move into design and engineering, and then you move to construction. So each step of the way takes resources. You can go to the next slide. So our original concept plan, that high-level look, was published in 2003. Since then, there have been a couple of more detailed feasibility studies. The 2015 Kernersville feasibility study looked at the section from Triad Park into downtown Kernersville. And then in 2019, Guilford County on their side did a deeper dive onto that 11 miles that are in Guilford County. Okay, next slide. So today there's been, go back one more, thanks. So active projects, this is the Forsyth County side of the Piedmont Greenway. There's a lot going on, so it's exciting to see some of these projects start to come together to realize the vision of the Greenway. So starting from west to east, so from left side of the slide to the right side of the slide, the first section is nearly ready for construction, going from Salem Lake to East Forsyth High School on Hastings Hill Road. The yellow segment, which is number 2 on the map, is a piece that requires some further study, that feasibility study. And that's something that's being asked of the council, of the aldermen tonight, to provide some matching funds for a special study with funding from the Transportation Planning Organization. Number 3 is your existing Kernersville Greenway that connects into the future Pope Memorial Park. Number 4 is a gap. And then number 5 is the part that goes from downtown to Triad Park. And that's that feasibility study I talked about that Kernersville invested in 2015 in a partnership with the MPOs and both counties. That part just received some funding for design and engineering from the state. So we're beginning to see some movement there. So again, it's that long process where every step takes time and resources. You can go to the next slide. This is the whole map of the Greenway, but focusing on the Guilford County side. That feasibility study in Guilford County led to an acquisition of a key property that's becoming a park in Summerfield that will have a mile of the Piedmont Greenway. So we're starting to see some action there. And then we're also reconsidering the alignment to maybe loop into Guilford Technical Community College and Colfax Elementary, and then to get to Triad Park. So there's still lots of questions in Guilford County, and we're looking for a possible study there, given the high number of private landowners along the current alignment. Okay, then the next slide. And I just want to mention that because I mentioned some current investment, in the past year, the Piedmont Greenway has earned $1 million of state investment. Half of that is for that design and engineering study here in Forsyth County, from Triad Park to downtown Kernersville. The other $500,000 is for that mile of Piedmont Greenway on the Bandera Farms Park property in Summerfield. And this is a relatively new coalition. It is a broad voice for trails across the state. The coalition has members that include nonprofits, local governments, and industry partners. And the goal is to sustain or to achieve sustained state funding for trails, to demonstrate to our General Assembly that investment in trail infrastructure is important for communities of all sizes. And so just want to recognize the work of the coalition in delivering this $1 million worth of resources to the Piedmont Greenway here in our region. And then I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your prior investments in the Piedmont Greenway with matching funds, and then also to thank you for your consideration of matching funds for the feasibility study from East Forsyth High School to the Kernersville. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your presentation, Palmer. Mr. Apple, go ahead.
Palmer, are you related to any McIntyres that used to live in Chapel Hill?
No, my husband's from Cleveland, Ohio. So
Okay.
it's a different McIntyres.
You might be okay with this board then, because if you'd been related to me, you'd have had problems.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
What is the total length of this trail once again?
About 19 miles.
19 miles.
And that's from Highway 220 in Guilford all the way to Salem Lake, Linville Road.
Thank you. Mr. Swisher, did you have something to present on this item as well?
Yeah, going along with us, this item is item C. It's a resolution of support for a feasibility study. The matching funds required, the total cost of the study is $150,000. It's $30,000, which is 20%. I think Forsyth County is committed to $15,000 of that 30. So this would be committing the town to $15,000. And this is, so some of you may know, some of you may not. It is the second leg of our greenway, kind of the second and third, going all the way to East Forsyth. We've been planning for that when the 73-74 bypass was built. There is a tunnel under that road that will eventually connect to the greenway coming in from Salem Lake, and then it will come down and connect to the Kernersville Creek Greenway over to the greenway that exists now.
Curtis, let me make sure I'm understanding this right, that Forsyth County as a whole is allocating or committing 15,000 to this project.
Correct. They're committing the total is 30,000. They're committing 15 and asking us to commit 15 to make the 30,000 total.
So that includes Winston-Salem too, or just Forsyth County?
Just Forsyth County.
Huh.
Chris, if you come to the microphone, because we can't pick up on what you're saying on the video.
The 150 total cost for the feasibility study would come from the Winston-Salem TPO.
Okay.
The local match is 20%, which we would be splitting with Forsyth County.
Okay.
And the city of Winston in that 30,000, I think it's Forsyth County and Kernersville, because I think all of the greenway is in either Kernersville or Forsyth County, with none of it in Winston-Salem. And that is item C.
If, as I see that this is for that block grant, do we only contribute money if the block grant is received?
The grant will go through, or the submittal will go through a process with the TPO to get scored, and if it gets awarded to us, then we would go through the
And then we would pay
process.
the money?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
I would make a motion to approve funding. Approved if the grant's approved.
Okay, I've got a motion by Alderman Thompson. Got a second by Alderman Apple. All in favor? It's unanimous. I think the section of our greenway that's been built has been very well received by the citizens of Kernersville, and also a lot of people enjoy the area around Salem Lake that's already built. So I know Curtis and myself have been involved over the years to try and save some of the tunnels and accesses and that kind of thing. So thank you for the presentation. Yeah, it would be a nice addition. I think the only complaint I've ever heard is that there's not enough places to park near the greenways. If you have a long enough greenway, there's a lot of places to park along it.
We'll have a few more parking places for hours once Oak Park opens up.
Yeah, probably a lot more.
Yeah.
All right, what have we got next? Mr. Swisher, do you have something next, or?
You know, item D is Hunter Stasek from the Winston-Salem Transportation Planning Organization. He's going to give an overview of the Winston-Salem TPO, and then the item after that is the execution of a MOU with the Winston-Salem TPO and member organizations.
And of course, Bill Apple serves on the TPO, has for several years now. So welcome, Hunter.
Thank you, Mayor Morgan. Good evening, members of the Kernersville Board of Aldermen. Good to be with you this evening. My name is Hunter Stazak, and I am the TPO Administrator for the Winston-Salem Area Transportation Planning Organization. And later this evening, we'll be asking you to adopt our Memorandum of Understanding, essentially recertifying that the town of Kernersville is part of the Winston-Salem Area Transportation Planning Organization. Because that's something that we only do once every decade or even longer. We thought this would be a great opportunity to tell you a little bit about what the Winston-Salem Area Transportation Planning Organization is. And so that's why we've put together this slide deck called Get to Know the Winston-Salem Area TPO. And so with that, we'll move to the next slide that provides a little bit of a roadmap of where we'll be going in this presentation. And so you'll see that we'll start by just defining what the Winston-Salem Area Transportation Planning Organization is, its overall purpose, and its membership. From there, we'll then talk about the organizational structure, which Mayor Morgan just mentioned is made up of the Transportation Advisory Committee, and Mr. Apple is a member on that. And then we'll talk about how key focus areas and initiatives, or the key focus area initiatives that we've got going on here at the TPO. We'll talk about the local transportation projects here in the town of Kernersville that the MPO, or Transportation Planning Organization, has been a part of. And then we'll close with some information about where you and the public can stay connected with the TPO. So we'll start a little bit with some basics about what the Transportation Planning Organization is. And this story really starts in the 1950s and the 1960s when the United States federal government is building the interstate highway system and is becoming more involved in investing in the United States transportation system at the local and state levels. And so as part of that, they say, if we're going to make investments at the state and local levels, there needs to be a plan in place. And those plans need to be locally adopted and locally accepted. And in order to make that happen, we're going to set up forums for urban areas all around the country of populations of 50,000 or more, and we're going to call them MPOs, or Metropolitan Planning Organizations. And so our MPO here in the Winston-Salem urbanized area was established in 1974, and the area is shown here on this map, and it's an area that radiates out from Winston-Salem north to King, south to Midway, east here to Kernersville, and west to Louisville, Clemens, and Bermuda Run. Overall, we are the federally mandated and funded organization that is charged with making multimodal transportation planning, policy, and funding decisions for that geographic area. So let's talk a little bit about the basics, what the federal government expects a metropolitan planning organization to produce. First, we're expected to carry out a cooperative, continuing, and comprehensive transportation planning process. We start really at the top of the funnel, let's say, and that's when we develop a comprehensive transportation plan. For lack of a better term, it's really just a wish list of all of the transportation improvements that we would like to see if funding were no issue. And then from there, we are required to establish a metropolitan transportation plan by the federal government. And that's a 20+ year plan that is fiscally constrained, meaning it looks at the future revenues and costs of projects over the course of the next 20 years to really whittle down that comprehensive transportation planning project list down to something that is more manageable and implementable over the course of the next 20 years. From there, we whittle it down even further to the 10-year picture, which is called the TIP, or the Transportation Improvement Program. That's the 10-year construction and funding schedule in the state of North Carolina that gets updated statewide every 2 to 4 years, and it's amended regularly. And then finally, the TPO is expected to produce a UPWP, or Unified Planning Work Program, and that's essentially the budget or listing of tasks that all transportation planning staff employed by the TPO are expected to carry out. And the UPWP also contains information such as studies that are funded through the TPO, like the one that you just heard about earlier today. With that, we'll move to the next slide and talk about who the TPO brings together. The TPO brings together 12 municipalities, portions of 4 counties, North Carolina Department of Transportation Division 9, 3 transit agencies, including the Winston-Salem Transit Authority, Davidson County Transportation System, and of course the Piedmont Authority for Regional Transportation, which serves portions of Kernersville, and 1 airport, the Smith Reynolds Airport. We're overseen and work cooperatively with the United States Department of Transportation, particularly the Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration. And most importantly, we serve a population of 443,376 folks within that area as of the 2020 census. Now we'll move on to talk about the TPO structure and how decisions get made. Well, first, we're made up of several staff people that are employed by the City of Winston-Salem in the Department of Transportation, and that's what's called the lead planning agency. So even though we are City of Winston-Salem Department of Transportation employees, we also work for the town of Kernersville, for all of the counties and municipalities and transit agencies, and bringing those groups together to make regional transportation plans happen. So it's important to note, we've got me, the TPO administrator, a principal planner, a project planner that's focused on transit, a project planner that's focused on bicycle and pedestrian projects like the ones you heard about today, a transportation planner, an engineering technician, and we can hire up to 2 transportation planning interns as well. We'll move on to how the TPO structure that starts with that base of staff then translates into funding decisions and adoptions of plans like the ones that I told you about earlier today. But first, staff will make a baseline recommendation based on our technical expertise, local knowledge, and public input. We'll then refer that to a technical coordinating committee, which is made up of local staff such as city managers, town planners, engineers, and so on, and they will refer those recommendations to the Transportation Advisory Committee. And the Transportation Advisory Committee is ultimately the final authority on the TPO, and they are the policy board made up of elected officials from each of those municipalities and member agencies that I mentioned to you earlier. So you may be wondering, so who here in the town of Kernersville is involved in the Technical Coordinating Committee or the Transportation Advisory Committee? At your TCC level, Chris Jensen, the Public Services Director here for the town of Kernersville, is the primary representative on the TCC and has helped assist us on many of the comprehensive transportation plan and metropolitan transportation plan elements that I mentioned earlier. And Catherine Garner, the Community Development Director, has also been involved as the alternate member of the TCC. And of course, the TAC representatives are Mr. Bill Apple, the alderman here in the town of Kernersville, and he also serves, of course, as the TAC chairman, newly elected as of January for the Transportation Advisory Committee, and he is joined by an alternate, Mayor Pro Tem Gorham. On this slide, we'll kind of take a step back and talk a little bit about all of the initiatives that the TPO is involved in. I mentioned the core planning documents, but the TPO does a lot more than that. Some of it comes down to public involvement. We'll hold pop-up events throughout the area, and we're looking forward to joining you for some of your events this summer as we're able. We also put together the Transportation Improvement Program, hold local calls for projects to hear from each of the agencies in the area about what projects are most important to your communities and which ones you would like to see funded. We evaluate those projects and we make recommendations for funding to the board. We also are involved in project planning. So the feasibility study for the Piedmont Greenway, or that leg of the Piedmont Greenway that you heard about earlier today, is a core focus of the TPO, and some of our project planners even lead and help manage some of those projects. At the data level, we're proud to support a traffic count program, which is at no cost to each of the member agencies as part of our TPO. And one thing that I'd like to highlight there is, let's say you've got an area that you're concerned about congestion or safety. You can request TPO staff send out the contractor that we send out to get traffic counts. We can get that traffic count data for a peak hour period or a 24-hour period or whatever might be necessary to understand whether or not that intersection potentially meets warrants for signals, or maybe it's a good contender for an all-way stop or something to that effect. So the traffic count program is something We'd like to promote, and certainly we've worked with your staff to identify areas that could use those counts. And as an added bonus, we get near-miss crash data when we go out there from that consultant, which can also reveal really important information about whether or not an intersection has potential safety hazards. And then finally, our major job, of course, is regional coordination. One of the things that we do every 10 years is, of course, adopt the Memorandum of Understanding, but we also maintain a regional travel demand model and hold regional workshops to help folks understand what their options are for funding transportation. And so that's a good segue into talking about what I think people are most interested in when it comes to the TPO, and that is the project. I'm going to take a water break real quick and then dive into the update. So the Kernersville area has several transportation improvement program projects that are active today. One of them is U6188. That is the Piney Grove Modernization Project. That's for an area of Piney Grove north of Nelson over to Brown, and that will expand that road to 3 lanes with bicycle lanes and sidewalks. Location and survey work is currently underway for that project, and we're anticipating a date for right-of-way acquisition to be 2027 and construction being 2030. As you may be aware, those dates are obviously subject to change. U6003 involves the construction, of the Kernersville Loop, and that will, from Piney Grove to NC 150, is about 80% complete today as of the January report from the North Carolina Department of Transportation, and that project is expected to be completed this spring. And then finally on that list is U5760, that's the Kernersville Southern Loop. A pre-construction meeting was held in January, or actually in December rather, and they're anticipating the completion of that very large project, which is also known as the Big Mill Farm / Hopkin Road Improvement Project, will be done in 2031. So those are major projects, and we'll talk about the distinction between major state projects and locally administered projects in a little bit more detail on one of the following slides, but I'll also highlight really quickly what your locally administered projects are. These are projects that your staff are actively managing that the TPO helps fund. And so the 2 projects that I really want to highlight with you are the West Mountain Street Turn Lane Project and Sidewalk Project, and then the Harmon Lane Sidewalk Project. We'll then move on to the next slide and talk about how the NPO or TPO was involved in funding that project. So I mentioned to you at the start of this presentation that the TPO is involved in developing the Transportation Improvement Program. We do this in North Carolina through a process called prioritization. What that really looks like is a major call for projects statewide with the transportation planning organizations like us, divisions like Highway Division 9, all submit a listing of projects based on needs identified in the Comprehensive Transportation Plan and Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And so we're limited to a certain number of submittals every couple of years. So we submit that priority list, and then it goes through a comprehensive scoring process at the state level. After that point, we eventually get the scores back from the state on how that project fared in terms of safety, congestion, and various other factors. And we turn over the opportunity to the Transportation Advisory Committee to recommend local input points towards a project. That can happen at the regional impact stage and the division needs stage. And that local input point coordination that we do with the Transportation Advisory Committee is critical in determining whether or not a project has scored high enough to potentially receive funding. We'll then move on to the next call for projects, and that's the Regional Flexible Funding Program. What I mentioned on the previous slide was a really big call for projects at the statewide level. You need to think about this as more of a localized bucket of money in the amount of $10 to $12 million per year that the TPO has specific programming authority over. And so this is a reimbursement program, much like the special studies program that was mentioned earlier. 80% of a project's cost will be covered as long as it's eligible through federal funds. And the municipality, like the town of Kernersville, is responsible for a 20% local match. Actually, an example of a project that was completed through the RFF, or Regional Flexible Funding Program, using some surface transportation block grant funds was the Kerner Mill Greenway. And so currently we're accepting applications through our typical call for projects from January 6th all the way through February 20th of 2026. How decisions get made, we hold that call for projects, we evaluate those projects based on adopted criteria from our board, we make a recommendation based on funding availability, the Transportation Advisory Committee makes a decision, approves it, we program the Transportation Improvement Program and State Transportation Improvement Program, and then we, as the TPO, work closely with each of your staff to help carry out those locally administered projects. In addition to the RFF program, we're also proud to support a special studies program, which similarly requires that 20% local match, and the Piedmont Greenway feasibility study that will look at options for connecting East Forsyth High School over to the current Kernersville Greenway is an example of a project that can be funded through the TPO's special studies program. So with that, we'll head to the second to last slide, which just talks a little bit about how you can stay in touch with us. Our link is pretty easy to remember. It's cityofws.org/TPO, and that'll take you to our main page where you can find all of that information. We also have a public comment center, so if you have concerned citizens or citizens who are just interested in learning about transportation and want to have their voices heard, that's a really convenient survey-based website to turn them towards. And then, of course, you're well positioned here in the town of Kernersville to have the chairman of the Transportation Advisory Committee here. And if you're ever interested in attending one of those meetings, those are held typically on the third Thursday of each month at 4:15, and most of them are virtual, and there's more information at that link. So with that, I'll turn to my closing remarks. I'm always open to phone calls or emails to discuss the transportation planning process. I wanted to highlight a few more events that are happening in this area. First, that call for projects. If you do have a capital project need, make sure that that application is submitted by February 20th. Our Transportation Advisory Committee meets next on February 19th. And then this summer, stay tuned for Prioritization 8.0 to see what projects get assigned local input points and may have a good shot at getting programmed in the 2028-2037 STIP. With all of that, thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Swisher, did we have some follow-up from that one?
Yes, ma'am. Item E is the memorandum of understanding for the Winston-Salem Area Transportation Advisory Organization and the member organizations.
All right, and this is a consideration of continuing to participate.
Correct.
All right. So we need a resolution that authorizes the execution of a memorandum of understanding with the Winston-Salem Transportation Advisory Organization and member organizations. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
Got a motion by Alderman Savanas.
Second.
Second, I couldn't hear who that was. Second by Alderman Thompson. All in favor? It's unanimous. All right, I will sign that for you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service, Alderman Gorham, as well. All right. Anything further on this? Okay. I have a question. Hunter, I don't know if you know the answer to this question. Come forward if you don't mind so we can hear you. So Sarah asked a very good question recently. There is you might not know because you're involved in the planning and the organizing, but I just curious. We're both very curious. There is traffic signals with burlap bags over them or plastic bags over them at Piney Grove in association with this U6003 project, and they've been there for quite some time. So we're both very curious. Mr. Gorham, you may be curious as well. We're very curious as to when the bags come off and people get started practicing stopping at this light.
That's a great question, and I can get that answer for you from Division 9 on what the general time frame for that would be. But typically the signalization piece, that last piece, happens towards the end of that project.
Okay.
People need to learn how to use that light. Like, I already know that's going to be, it's going to be rough.
It just is like, we've seen, there was a traffic light that was added Perry Road at at Mountain Street in support of John Deere. The traffic light was added there, and it took people a while to learn to stop at it. John Deere had signs up inside the business reminding people coming out of John Deere that the people going down Mountain Street may not be aware that that light is there yet, and so to be cautious. So it just seems like there's a lot of times there's the signs that go up that say, you know, new light ahead with the flags on them and that sort of thing. So we're just curious.
Yeah, and I
What
was
the
going to
plan
bring that
was.
up. That's likely to be a part of this is new traffic pattern ahead or some sort of signage associated with that. But I could confirm what the overall plan is. First of all, get you that date for when the burlap sacks might come off. But second, you know, if there will be some kind of assisted signage to let people know that that's something that they'll have to stop for now.
Super. I thought your presentation was very informative, and we really, really appreciate you being here today. Did anyone else have any questions?
Is there a date where that road is going to be open?
Is what?
The date?
He had said spring.
Spring?
So spring's pretty long.
Yeah, it's a vague timeline, and I can get a more specific date for you, likely from Division 9.
Okay, thank you.
We get a lot of questions about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Apple.
Question that I think that a lot of folks don't know, and I was surprised to learn that even sidewalk projects, you know, I think the general citizen in Kernersville, those folks who elect us, don't sometimes understand that if there's consensus in the community to put a sidewalk from point A to point B, it has to go through this process as well. Sidewalks, bicycle paths, walkways, you know, all of those things are screened through this same process and are competing for funds. And that sometimes, you know, the localities may submit a list of projects that they'd like to see done in order of priority, but funding our 20% of that locally under the regional program that you're talking about may be a limitation that we have to face budgetarily as well. So, but you have authority over all of those kind of projects, and I don't think there's a general understanding that even a sidewalk, it's not a matter of just coming up with the concrete to pour. There's a planning process for that too. So that's important, I think, for people who are listening to know.
That's right, and thank you for flagging that. I think one thing that I'll add, if you don't mind, is, you know, the transportation planning process is really long. It starts by getting your project on a piece of paper in the comprehensive transportation plan, and then finding funding for it is a whole other battle. Like you said, you have to go through this call for projects where, you know, there may not be sufficient funding available to make your project happen. You have to compete for that funding through the MPO, and then once you get that project funded, there are a lot of strings attached to federal money, a lot of particular regulations that you need to follow, especially in the design process, that can create hiccups for a project. So there's a lot to it, and I'm glad that you've brought that up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we move on too much from this one, Mr. Swisher, Mr. Apple was asking, you know, what things the town ought to consider putting in for this. But I think more and more with the time frame of widening Piney Grove for the project from Nelson to Brown Road, and with this new link in the Kernersville connector going through from Piney Grove to 150, it seems like there's going to be more and more demand on the intersection of Dobson and Linville Springs Road. There's a lot of demand at that intersection for people coming from Kerner Road or Old Valley School Road to go left onto Linville Springs in order to get to Piney Grove Elementary School, in order to get to Kernersville Middle School, and then already and now in the future to get to this new segment of road that'll connect out to Macy Grove Interchange. I think that what they had said from the DOT a couple years ago was a traffic signal cost about $1 million. And I saw that there's an $11 million limit, so it's kind of creeping up towards that if it's a 11 million bucket for all projects, but wondered if that would be a reasonable project to submit. Try and start getting safety funds and start getting interest in that.
I think they're doing a study on that now, and Chris might know more, or Hunter, but I think they're doing a study now that goes over to John Deere that includes that intersection. So I don't know where they are with that particular study. I know it got funded, but I think that's all part of that study.
There was supposed to be a study from the state that was supposed to be done in December of 2025, but it's not been presented to us. I've not seen a report come across email or anything like that about it. So maybe it's done, maybe they're still working on it. What do you know, Hunter? Do you have any insights on this?
So we can look into that on
Okay.
the NCDOT side, but one thing that I did want to share was that through the TPO's traffic count program that I mentioned earlier, we did get traffic counts at Linville Springs and Dobson that would potentially support that type of project. The other thing that came to mind as you were talking about, is that a project that's potentially eligible for that $11 million bucket of funding? The answer is likely yes. It's a definite yes because it's on the federal functional classification system, meaning it's federal aid eligible. But you would want to have a good basis in terms of study, so you would definitely want to talk to NCDOT to see what their recommendations for design would be at that location. You would want to make sure that you have a good awareness of what the risks are with that project. But it's certainly an eligible project through our RFF program.
Thank you.
You.
We'll look into that. Get back to you. I think Cough Projects is February 26th. Is that correct? Is that the last date?
20th.
Yes.
All right. Anything further? That or any other ideas about projects that we want to submit? Okay. All right, we'll move on then to the next item on the agenda. We are to item F, consideration of a resolution setting the new public hearing for voluntary annexation of property located at 1519 NC 66 South, 0 Kernersville Medical Parkway, 0 Beeson Road, and 0 NC 66 South, containing a little more than 54.69 acres, plus or minus, more or less. Fun for it to be out 3 decimal places, plus or minus. 54.69, more or less. All right. That is resolution. At my
It says on here, April 7th.
April 7th.
All right, do I have a motion to adopt this resolution setting the new time and place for public hearing of this annexation?
So moved.
Okay, got a motion by Alderman Thompson, second by Alderman Apple, and the date would be April 7th. All in favor? It's unanimous. All right, Keith, do you need anything else? All right, we have another consideration of a resolution setting a public hearing for voluntary annexation of property located at 115 Linville Springs Road containing 13.48 plus or minus acres, more or less. That proposed date.
The 3rd of March.
March 3rd. That's today. No, that's February. Okay, March 3rd, next month. Great thing about February and March, same dates but different months. All right. All right, do I have a motion to do so? Got a motion by Alderman Apple.
Second.
Second by Alderman Savanas. All in favor? It's unanimous. I was like, wait, the 3rd is today, March 3rd. Or in February 3rd. Maybe we will get away from the snow. I don't know. I've seen some pretty good snows in the south in March as well. I'm sure you have. All right. Do we need to vote? Good. We voted? Okay. I was too busy laughing. Curtis is, Curtis, I hope you're right. I hope you're right about this. No, I know that public services staff would probably be pretty happy about that too. April 3rd. We had snow, I think it was like April 3rd or 5th. Do you all remember? It's just little flurries that day. We have had snow in April too. All right, we are to the consent agenda. No more talk to snow. All the following matters are considered to be routine by the Board of Aldermen and will be enacted by one motion with no separate discussion unless a board member or citizen so requests, in which event the matter will be removed from the consent agenda and considered under the following item. A, approval of minutes for the December 9 closed session. B, approval of minutes for the January 6 closed session. C, approval of minutes for the January 6 regular meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review those items? All right. Hang on a minute. Is there anyone who'd like to see anything removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none in the audience or with staff, any aldermen wish to have any of those items removed for a correction to the minutes? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Gorham, second by Alderman Thompson. All in favor? It's unanimous. All right, Mr. Swisher.
Madam Mayor, Ashley Sinclair from Parks and Recreation is here to give an update on the 250 and 155 celebration. You have a brief memo there at your desk, and she's going to give you an update on where we are.
Hello. I wanted to come and give an update and just kind of ask for direction regarding the event. And I'm just here to address some of the questions that were brought up at the last Board of Aldermen meeting back on January 6th. So the event is currently projected to cost about $70,000. These costs include artist contracts, staging, sound, fireworks display, a drone show, signage, and additional marketing. These fixed expenses are based upon the cooperative vision set forth by the event committee. On the topic of sponsorships that was brought up, since October, we have actively pursued sponsorships. Heather Chapman and myself are the two that have been meeting with businesses weekly, if not daily. And to date, a confirmed sponsorship total that we have is $3,100. Although that we continue the outreach for the event, we do not have any presenting sponsors currently that has committed. On the topic of vendors, food truck and vendors fees do not offer a substantial offsetting revenue. All the vendors were secured under a flat registration fee, which is a normal event practice. I know it was discussed as well about alcohol sales from local partners. These typically operate under a shared revenue model. While it presents a more beneficial agreement, it is still a limited upside. Shared revenues are dependent on total sales, and not all guests will purchase beer or wine, and revenue remains uncertain. Based on some of our past events at Ivy Redmond, collecting parking fees has proven to produce a substantial revenue. Parking revenues from past events successfully have offset expenses for cross-country meets and large-scale events that we have had at the Parks and Recreation building, like rentals and when we've had tournaments as well. And due to these reasons, it was recommended to enact the parking fees. We anticipate visitors traveling from across the region, not only Kernersville, specifically to see the headline artist. Parking fees will help ensure a town portion of the event costs are offset and not completely absorbed by the town. I am here to suggest a tiered system for parking. So $5 for any 4-person vehicle, $10 for a crossover vehicle, $10 for crossover vehicles, 15 for trucks and full-sized SUVs. We were thinking ones that essentially would have like third row seating is kind of what we were thinking for that. And then $20 for buses or any type of oversized vehicle that would seat, multiple passengers. This aligns pretty on par with parking fees at any other venues. Concert parking often exceeds $20. So this proposal obviously asks for a lot far less. We plan clear advanced communication through social media, event pages, press releases, of course, on-site signage, so no attendee should arrive misinformed. Staff has already used Square devices to take card payments, but of course, cash will also be available as an option. I'm seeking direction for this event tonight instead of the decided time frame for either the end of February or March. Waiting until then has only impacted the planning process, and I have paused board momentum waiting for the presentation to gain clarity and direction. Without a firm direction of whether or not to charge for parking, I cannot continue marketing this event, and timing matters. Tonight, I ask for the board approval to move forward with the parking fee structure presented. This decision allows us to proceed, and this protects the department budget and supports a quality event for the community. I appreciate your support for the America 250 and Kernersville 155 Planning Committee and all the departments that are involved. Thank you.
What is the proposal for the parking? If you'll remind me of the fee, the per car parking fee.
Oh, yeah. I got you. It is $5 for a 4-person vehicle, $10 for any crossover vehicle, and then 15 for trucks and full-sized SUVs. So that was the one that I mentioned about the third row seating. Yeah. And then $20 for buses, oversized vehicles. We were anticipating that, if a local church or somebody had a bus, charging $20 for that as well, because those could hold anywhere from 15 or more people.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
When you say truck, are you talking about just a regular pickup truck
I mean,
that only seats?
Like 15 passenger vans, small buses, that's what we're doing.
So a regular pickup truck with a back seat in it would be $5?
Right, we're looking at passengers to like a sedan, an extended cab truck would be 4 passengers, so you day 5.
Gotcha.
But if you get like a full-size Suburban and you can put 6 to 8 people, then you go up to 15.
Okay.
yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Under your live entertainment, the live music, is that just that one band that we spoke about last time, or do we have some local?
3.
And who would that consist of?
So there is Chris Lane, obviously, is the headliner that was mentioned last time. Alec Ottaway, he's a local artist that's around the Triad. He actually performed at our 4th of July in 2025. And the opener, I've yet to make communication with, but it's also someone that we've worked with already.
I don't recognize these bands, but my question is there any live entertainment that caters to the African-American or the Hispanic population here in Kernersville?
Yes, that's who we're trying to hope for as far as the opener goes.
Okay, great.
Looks like Tanglewood Festival of Lights has cars, vans, and trucks as $20 cash, $23 credit card. And then they call them family vehicles. And then commercial vehicles are vans, limos, minibuses. And this is for the Festival of Lights, $45 cash, $48 a credit card. And the buses and motor coaches, $115 cash, $118 credit card. So it looks like Tanglewood calls cars, vans, and trucks family vehicles. and then commercial vehicles as vans, limos, or minibuses. So I guess I'm not sure that people would necessarily understand like a family vehicle versus where they're a pickup truck, you know, like Curtis was saying, is it going to be confusing?
Well, I think with the marketing that, we're planning on doing, I've already spoke with a woman that helps with our PR out, that's going to help with some of the verbiage and some of the marketing that we're going to do as far as Facebook, social media, those press releases, any type of local media that we can get in contact with, the news, and specify those tiers and say what we mean when we say four-person vehicle versus an oversized vehicle. I think with some good clarity, some good verbiage, shouldn't be a problem.
Let me comment, if I may, Ashley, that Fox 8 has expressed a lot of interest in wanting to know when there are things going on in Kernersville, Justin Lundy in specific. So he's looking for things to help us promote.
Yeah.
And that'd be a good contact that I would recommend you strongly consider.
Absolutely, yeah. We've got great relationships with most of our media outlets, pretty much across Winston and Greensboro that we speak with. We had 2 or 3, I can't remember off the top of my head, that come out to Juneteenth. A few that's come out to 4th of July. So we try to stay in their emails as much as possible. So
along with the local outlets, I've spoke with Bill Bushman with Our State. So we're partnering with the Chamber and the Visitor Center, and we're doing a full page ad for spring. And we're going to highlight the 250, 155, Community Day for the Folly, and Chambers, Spring Folly. So we're doing those 3 as a statewide outlet. It hits Virginia, South Carolina. Then you've got Chris Lane's outlets, his fans, and then we've also planned along with the partnership between the Chamber, the Visitor Center, ourselves, our hometown landing page, like, visit Kernersville, and highlighting those events as well. So we'll have plenty of outlets to keep marketing all our events, not just these, but these. I've focused on doing February as a kickoff to focus on the 250 and 155 to get the word out. So, and we meet with Justin Lundy quite often. He calls every so often. So.
And there was, we had 4 banners that were made by Sign Resources. And on those banners, we actually have in pretty big lettering, kville155.com, which is the website that Adam made for the event, where parking information will be completely transparent as far as what people should expect. So I think, putting that front and foremost of every type of marketing channel that we have, I mean, there really shouldn't be a misunderstanding. That's why we have marketing, so.
And I can tell the board that the parking at $5, even up to $20 is a bargain. Tomorrow night at Bowman Gray Stadium, they're having the Clash. You want to park and ride the shuttle bus, it's $56 to park, $125 for a ticket. You want to park across the street and walk in, it's $69 to park, still $125 for the ticket. That's if you park in the city-owned parking lot. If you want to park in the private lots up the street, it's about $75. And then you get to walk about a quarter of a mile and still buy the $125 ticket. But if anybody wants, I got some tickets cheap for tomorrow night because it's going to be snowing. So but parking at $5 and $20 is, I mean, it's reasonable compared to what other event parking is in the triad for events.
I worry that by charging to park, that it's going to steer some people away, like who are local, like people who aren't into country music, for instance, who be like, I don't want to spend the $10 park, but I do want to be able to support the town. Like, I don't know.
I think with the 3 artists that we have, like, yes, the headliner is country. We do have the gentleman that's doing the middle act. He is not doing country. He's doing a lot of kind of like classic rock, older music, covers, if that makes sense. And then the first artist will be obviously completely different from those two. So, you know, 3 genres right there. You've got fireworks. People in Kernersville love fireworks. You've got the drones, which we were the first in the triad to bring drones. So I think you've got that as a seller. And then you've got food trucks. So not only, you know, do we have a following, does Chris have a following? Each one of the food trucks that we have has a separate following. I know food trucks that people will literally stalk them and their locations as to where they're going to be. And we've got some that are not just Kernersville. We've got some from across the triad to hopefully, you know, bring in those Winston-Salem and Greensboro folks. And, you know, on the topic of craft vendors, commercial vendors, same thing. You know, if I buy my specific cup from Sally's Crafts and she's going to be there, I'm going to come and see Sally's Crafts. So same kind of topic. So it's definitely more than just, you know, a country music artist that we're hoping is going to pull people out to make a $10 parking fee worth it.
And the date that we're having this is not conflicting with anybody else in the triad, is it?
No, sir. A majority of our nation celebrating has chosen July 4th, which is one of the big reasons why the committee chose April. It's only a few days after our date of March 31st, correct me if I'm wrong, that Kernersville was incorporated. So that's kind of why we chose, you know, around April. And then, of course, trying to stay away from Easter as well.
Great.
Yep.
So what do you need from the board tonight?
So I'm kind of been at a little bit of a halt for the last month to kind of go forward as far as what we're going to do with marketing and everything wise, just holding off on what the decision is with parking. So I wanted to see what kind of answer that we could have as far as charging or not charging.
And explain again the proposal so that we know clearly what we'd be voting on.
Yes.
The proposal is to charge for parking, and what were the amounts and the criteria?
Yeah, so the suggested tier system that we came up with was for a 4-person vehicle is $5. So to Curtis's point, that would be, you know, my typical Ford Fusion or a Toyota Tacoma. A $10 for a crossover vehicle, $15 for trucks or full-size SUV, which is that 3rd row seating that we mentioned, and then $20 for any buses or oversized vehicles. So anything that essentially, you know, people would cram into. And
So what's a compact SUV?
A Chevy Equinox that has only 2, like the front and the back seat.
yeah, a 4Runner.
So would that be $5 or $10?
That would be the 10.
I think that gets really complicated and people might argue.
Okay.
I think that we might want to if we are going to charge parking, I think that we might want to simplify similar to how you described Tanglewood.
Yeah, Tanglewood said it was basically family vehicles or commercial vehicles. The family vehicles were one price, commercial was another price.
Okay, we can do, I mean, we can do 10, 15, 20. I mean, we can keep it.
Yeah, because of what you
And
get
if you have a
into.
bus, what are you going to do, charge them 15? You know, that doesn't seem fair either.
What we could do is we can go 4-person vehicles, to your point, a crossover, a CRV, a RAV4, a RAV4 would be 4 people. So we can keep that at 5, but then when you get to a Suburban, a Tahoe,
It's got third row,
Expedition.
if it has third row
third
seating.
row, we can go 15, and then for your 15-passenger vans, minibuses, that kind of stuff, we could do 20.
20.
Yeah.
That way, the small
It's clear.
SUVs, way I look at it, if it only has the front seats and the back seats and no
Yeah.
third row seats, it's $5.
Right.
If you have third row seating, I don't know if you want to go to 15, maybe 10, because you can only get, depending on the type of third row seat, you may only get 2 more people in it. But
Yeah.
then when you get into 15-passenger vans, like what we have in the PD, or you get into the Sprinter vans and buses, then go to 20.
Yep.
Because like a Chevy Traverse doesn't look like it's got a third row, but it does.
It does.
So like that's where I'm kind
So-
of getting at on.
So are you suggesting eliminate the 5 and go 10 up to 10, 20?
10 and 10 and 20.
Then leave it like that?
It's fine.
Okay.
That works. That
Do
works.
we need to put
$10
that in
for
the form of a motion, or what do we need to do tonight?
Yes,
Yes,
please.
please.
They've asked. So is the motion $10 parking or $20 parking, depending on whether it's a,
Okay,
A multi-seater, 15 passenger.
Yeah, 15 passenger van and up is
It's $20.
$20.
Anything else would be 10.
10.
okay. So would someone like to make a motion?
yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we charge, 15, 10, and 20,
10 and 20,
based on the type of vehicle it is.
correct. Mhm.
10 for anything a family would come in, 20 for commercial.
Right.
Yes,
Yep.
you said it so eloquently, Madam Mayor. You said it so eloquently.
It's a team effort. Thank you, Mr. Gorham. I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Gorham, second by Alderman Apple. All in favor? It's unanimous. Next time, put a memo with the report so we can just
Yeah,
think about it before we get here a
Yeah,
little
I
bit.
understand. I think I sent the memo last week maybe, so I apologize.
Like
if
with
it
a
didn't get-
chart, like this is what we want to do.
I got you.
Like with the specific. So,
Yep.
so we'll have to spend less time discussing it, but,
Okay.
by the way, Ashley, still love your flyer, and I gave it to everyone. And here it is for our video, but there is the website, kvl155.com, that was designed in-house for fun facts about Kernersville and everything you need to know about this festival, so, and then, you'll be doing a lot of updated advertising with the details.
Yes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do have to say, Alex Ottaway is a fun band. I think he offers a lot of variety, so I think that everyone will really enjoy that as well. So looking forward to hearing who your third band is when you get that lined up. Anything further on this?
Not on that. The only other thing I have, Madam Mayor, is would like to thank all of the folks in public services, PD, fire, but mainly public services for getting out, getting the roads clear. 2 weeks in a row. They did a great job. We had all the roads in Kernersville at this point have been clear. You all may have received calls, folks, complaining about the road not being clear or whatnot. Most of them that we received here at Town Hall were from folks that don't live inside the town. So we don't go, clear the roads. We got calls from as far out as Vance Road at 158. And folks wanting to know when we were going to come clear their road. And we told them we would not be coming to clear their road, nor would we be coming to pick up their garbage. We got a lot of those calls too. Evidently, some local garbage services have not collected garbage in 2 weeks. Understandably so. If they're out in the county, the roads have not been scraped in 2 weeks. But our folks did. They did a great job getting those clear. Hopefully, we don't have another one tomorrow night to worry about, but if we do, so be it. We'll go from there. Appreciate all of you that shared our post on your Facebook page. I know Alderman Sabanis did. I think maybe Alderman Apple. We posted one on Friday here, and I think it had 53,000 views yesterday. That was probably, other than maybe the one we posted years ago about what was going across the street from Cagney's, that was probably the most views we've gotten on any post. So folks are reading it, regardless of what you may read on 411 about what people say about the street clearing. That looks like they've not read the post, determine how we clear the street. Folks did read the post, and so all the way around it, for the storm that we had, 11 inches, when they initially were calling for 3 to 5. Everything worked out really well, and I really want to thank the folks that were involved in doing that.
Curtis, I'd like to echo that, but I'd also like to extend our thanks to the police and fire rescue department, because you've got a medical emergency at home, you don't care whether your house has been, whether your street has been scraped or not, you need fire rescue. you've got somebody that's trying to commit a property crime or other, you call the police department, you expect, the citizens, I think, expect services come, whether it's flooded or whether it's snowed in or whatever. We saw an ambulance sometime at lunchtime, I guess, that was out in the road because a driveway had not been scraped. And they were having to walk down an icy and snowy driveway to get to the person that needed their assistance. The doors of the ambulance were open and they were ready to load them up. And people rightly expect that kind of service, extraordinary service from our police and fire and rescue folks. And please thank your people. You brave the bad weather and the bad street conditions for being so responsive and making that extra effort to get it done. Thank you both.
And I would like to say, I just happen to think, now we're dealing with the water lines under the road that have frozen and burst. We have two right now in town. They closed the road at Green Street in North Main, right past Daws's. That burst sometime this afternoon, or actually yesterday, I got a call about it. City County Utilities has not been out yet to make that repair, so we closed the road there. And there's also one Cherry Street and Hastings or Kerner, whichever road that is, that also burst today sometime. So we have two of them. My guess is we'll probably have a couple more that continues to stay below freezing, but hoping they'll get out and make those repairs before tomorrow night when it drops below freezing again, so that the road's not frozen over. But if it is, we may have to close one over on Kerner and Hastings as well. But we did close Green Street, just a portion of it.
So I also wanted to express appreciation. Chris Jensen, you just started as Public Service Director, and now we've had kind of back-to-back winter weather that, Curtis, I don't think we've had two storms quite of these characters back to back before, with the ice from the first just staying around for a very long time and creating issues with a second, the large 11-inch snowfall on top of it. So it's done an excellent job of communicating and getting the job done for the citizens. I wanted to point out to residents of Kernersville who have not signed up for the app, the Kernersville Collect app. I thought gave really great comprehensive updates about when the trash would be picked up and explanations of some of the things going on. And I really appreciated the above and beyond of the town staff to make the decision to, in the time of our public services staff who drive the vehicles around for sanitation, to use what would have been yard waste trucks or household trash if needed, in order to go ahead and get people's garbage picked up so that they wouldn't have it for 2 weeks. So with the landfill having icy conditions and being closed, I thought that was a really fantastic thing for the town of Kernersville to do, to alter the schedule in that way to meet the most intense needs of the citizens. Probably not a lot of people were out there doing yard work anyway with the icy, snowy conditions. So that was just an excellent call. And so I would recommend to anyone who was curious about, is the trash actually going to come today with the weather, to go ahead and add that app to their collection of apps that they refer to, so they can get the updates and alerts. But an excellent job, and I'm not sure people realize the dedication of the staff to get this done. People were coming in to work in the middle of the night to go ahead and start clearing as soon as the precipitation stopped. That effort to get the brine down in advance, the effort to put on the already frozen roads where the ice from that first storm had gotten packed down, a layer of salt, and then come back and scrape it, and maybe even another layer of salt to get it to loosen up, to be able to be removed. So just a fantastic job by our staff, and it's really appreciated. All right. On weather? on other issues. Mr. Gorham?
Madam Mayor, I hereby make a motion that the board go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.1185 to establish or to instruct the public body's staff or negotiating agent concerning the portion to be taken by or on behalf of the public body in negotiating the price and other material terms of a contract or proposed contract for the acquisition of real property by purchase, option, exchange, or lease.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I've got them all over. I've got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Gorham, second by Sarah Sabanis. All in favor? It's unanimous. All right, we are now in closed session. Welcome back to the regular meeting of the Kernersville Board of Aldermen. Is there any further comments by aldermen or any further business before this board? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Got a motion by Alderman Sarah Sabanis, second by Mayor Pro Tem Gorham. All in favor? It's unanimous. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you for joining us.